Hey y'all, welcome in or welcome back to the channel. Last week, perhaps 2 weeks ago now, when I was talking about the Stanley, I was mentioning how it was just kind of one of the latest items to be a craze, in that the Stanley's rise in popularity or its status as a coveted item or just a really popular trend, it's not the first time that we've seen items like this. So today, we're going to look back through the 2010s and we're going to talk about a handful of things. Most of them are consumable items, but things that have been trends of the past decade, things that I feel like were as popular or similarly popular as the Stanley. We're going to talk about them, their rise, why I think they became popular, provide a little bit of critical discourse, but also just some fun commentary here and there too. This video is meant to be fun because most of this stuff is stuff that isn't popular anymore. Some of this stuff still does exist. You can use it or play with it or like it. That's still very much a thing. And I'm very curious to know if you own any of the things we talk about in this video, or if you've participated in these trends, if you still currently use some of this stuff, please weigh in the comments. So this is really meant to be fun. And one of the things I do want to have a serious kind of consuming moment before we do, that one of the things I kind of hope this video illuminates for you in your life is to show how coveted trends really do come and go. I know we talk about that all the time on this channel, and you may very well know this as a lesson in your own life. However, when something new comes about, when something feels it feels like you need it or you love it so much that love and that desire for it comes across as a need, and we just want something so badly. When we're in those moments, I think it can be hard to see the forest for the trees. And this video really illustrates that there have been dozens, if not hundreds of moments just like this that have happened in our lives, throughout our lives. And I think it's fun to look back on the stuff. Some of the stuff I've owned, used, participated in. And I was so obsessed with some of this stuff and I really wanted it. I coveted them so badly. And now I've forgotten all about it. So let's get into it. And I want to start off with the Swell water bottle. I believe this is the biggest water bottle trend of the 2010s. And there were / have been popular water bottles, the Nalgene and the Camelback. Also, I think around this time too, the BKR water bottles were really popular. I do think that Swell was more popular. These were big in the mid 2010s, 2014 to 2018, probably more realistically 2016 to 2018. And I think one of the reasons why this trend took off and had a greater, I would say, trend moment is because of the self-expression and the customizability aspect of it. When we look at previous water bottles, things like the Nalgene and the Camelback, both of these water bottles have stood the test of time. They're still relatively popular and you can still buy them at sporting goods stores, so they haven't gone anywhere. But I think these water bottles have been more of a persistent interest opposed to a specific rise and decline. You can still, in fact, get Swells as well, but I don't think that they are as popular as they once were, most especially when you look at the past 5 years with things like the Yeti and the Stanley and the Owala and others. I think the closest rival would probably be Clean Canteen, given that it was also a metal kind of double insulated water bottle. The BKR is glass, if I remember correctly. This is one of the first water bottles that offered such extreme customizability and personalization. It just hadn't been seen before, or at least not to this scale. They offered so many colors and styles. They also had collaborations with Starbucks, just like Stanley did. I currently own a purple one, and I also own one of the Starbucks collabs. The Starbucks one was gifted to me by somebody as a birthday gift. And I still do own my purple water bottle, except it smells terrible and it has smelled bad for a while. And I have tried everything in my power to clean this. If you know how to remove a smell from a water bottle, please, I would love to hear your secrets. And it's just kind of sat in my kitchen because Part of me is like, one day I'm going to be able to clean this, not make it smell. Other part of me is like, do I just buy another water bottle? I don't know. I haven't made up my mind about it. So it just hangs around. So this is a trend I absolutely fell for. Here is what one blog said about the Swell water bottles in 2016, kind of during its height of popularity. They say that these water bottles are actually a fashion statement and part of the healthy living fad that has emerged in the past few years. So how did Swell enter the market? I would argue it had to do with self-expression. There are plenty of water bottle brands out there that are just as functional as the Swell water bottle, but most do not provide the sleek look and different style options. The point is, you get to express yourself while still being a part of that elite health trend. They aren't branded as earthy, crunchy hiking bottles like the Camelback or Nalgene. They're branded with the urban, clean-cut, spin class feeling. The mission statement of the brand is all about ending the use of plastic water bottles and how Swell's stylish design has the potential to convert people to use them instead. I do agree that their customizability is what kind of skyrocketed them and made them so popular. I worked at Indigo during the height of this popularity, and we had an entire wall of Swells in different colors, and you could go on their website and there were truly dozens and dozens and dozens of colors and themes and patterns and textures that you could choose from. I also think the brand identity did play a big role in them. I think this person kind of nailed it, hit the nail right on the head, that the Camelback and the Nalgene, as well as the Clean Canteen, were much more of that like granola, crunchy. Clean Canteen, more of the environmentalist aspect of things. Neither of these things really had associations with fashion or wellness, kind of more like adventure, aesthetic, or brand identity. When we look at Swell, it really has that city slick Pilates type of vibe to it. Or I could really see a fitness influencer or more like wellness influencer carrying this around and seeing it in videos where they have their green smoothies and acai bowls. This kind of item really feels like the that girl or it girl type of product. But before those things were really TikTok things. And the mid to late 2000s, we really saw the aestheticization of wellness culture, and this type of product fits squarely into that. I'm a little bit more cynical than the author who talks about how they think that a product like this kind of encouraged people or could have encouraged people to adopt reusable water bottles, to forego that, single-use water bottles. And I don't really think that's true. I think that the appeal and the draw was the personalization and self-expression, and this environmentalism was a way to help people justify a purchase. Number 2 is definitely more lighthearted and fun, and it is the Shutter shades. Now, this was the early part of the 2010s. I feel kind of more somewhere around the line of like 2009 to like 2011. And this was definitely an era of like just fun, like the bright neon skinny jeans, the paint splatter t-shirts. It was people like Kanye West and LMFAO who popularized the Shutter shade. And this really is an example of celebrity culture influencing consumer culture. In 2024, celebrities do still influence consumer culture, but I just feel like in different ways than in the early 2000s. There are mega celebrities like Taylor Swift and Kim Kardashian that still do have wide appeal, but I do feel like the people who have the most influence are influencers. And I think back in the early 2000s and early 2010s, there was this like idea of celebrities kind of more generally as a concept using something that then appealed to the masses. Look how popular this thing is with celebrities. So celebrities doing something or wearing something really sold us. The late 2000s, we are like already seeing the rise of social media, but we weren't really in our prime until I would say like the mid 2010s, where like linking stuff and affiliate links and really getting that kind of personal selling aspect of things. Like, I think this is too early for that. I also think that these are an interesting item because these were purely accessories and they had no functional value. And if anything, they deterred vision than enhance or support it in any way. And so people were buying this because they saw it on celebrities, or they saw it, in music videos or things like that. And to me, it's way easier or more understandable to see somebody wearing Ruby Woo or a pair of shorts and be like, oh, I want to wear that. When you see this thing that doesn't do anything and deters your vision, to me, it's a harder sell and a really or more impactful or clearer demonstration of somebody buying something because it's on celebrities or because it's like hot. And at the time, I remember thinking like, wow, these are such shitty sunglasses. But my 15, how old was I in 2010? Like 15 or 16? My 16-year-old brain was like, these are shitty sunglasses, when I failed to recognize that they aren't actually sunglasses because there aren't lenses in them. So they were never meant to shield you from the sun. We just all got, maybe not we, but I got fooled by the shape and just thought sunglasses, and they're also called shutter shades. And where are the shutter shades now? Nowhere. These were such a fad. They had such a short window of time when they were popular, when they were a style, when they were an aesthetic, and then they're gone, and they're just like literal pieces of plastic. Probably millions of these were manufactured to just end up back in the garbage. And I remember seeing these everywhere. They were sold everywhere. So they did have their very brief moment in the sun. Next up is Tom's, and this is another item that had its rise in popularity in the late 2000s that spilled over into the 2010s. And by the time we get to the mid 2010s, we've already started to see the decline of the shoe. I remember seeing these everywhere, and I did actually own a pair in high school. They just seemed like a really practical casual shoe. And I also worked at Starbucks at the time, and these were very popular among Starbucks employees because they fit the dress code. They were relatively comfortable that you could wear like for a shift. I feel like Starbucks baristas at the time kind of had a lot of them had like that hipster kind of vibe, and Tom's definitely felt kind of granola crunchy hipster. I was trying to find out how these came to be so popular. And all of the articles I read said that it was the 1-for-1 model that hooked people into the brand. So their very famous statement was, for every shoe you buy, they give a shoe to a person in need. Apparently, news outlets heard this story or this promise, picked it up, and then started promoting it in, news venues. And then the masses or the people started buying them because they were so heavily reported. And this is probably one of the last items where I think this happened to. I don't think this was necessarily the last, but I think that something being picked up by a news outlet is just so uncommon now, or I should say, when the news outlet picks it up now, it's probably at the end of its cycle. Like, it's not anywhere near the beginning, and it's far less common for a news outlet to spark a trend than it was 20 years ago. What I found interesting compiling all of this stuff is that many of these items found their fame or their rise in trends before social media culture really got its, fingernails or its claws on consumer culture. And so I've personally found it fascinating to hear the different kinds of ways that stuff became popular. I did own these shoes, and my dislike for them didn't really have anything to do with aesthetic. These shoes are canvas, and other canvas shoes like Keds or Converse have protection on the toe area. These did not. If you ever stubbed your toe in these, that thing hurt. So there's no toe protection, which made them kind of shitty to wear out and about. Even regular ballet flats had more protection in the shoe area. Like Keds and Converse have rubber. Even if it doesn't come all the way up the toe box like the Keds kind of, it comes halfway up your foot. But a flat doesn't have rubber coming up the top. They just have it on the bottom. And so it's just thicker material in traditional flats that gives your toe some protection. This is just flimsy ass canvas. And then the bed of the foot was supposedly this like moisture wicking material, which was nice because your feet didn't like sweat and slip around like you can if the bottom of your flats are kind of more plasticky. but your shoes smelled like ass. And so these never really had longevity because they would get dirty and they would get so smelly. And I think the practical reasons contributed to the downfall of Toms. Did you own them? I'd be curious to hear about your experience with those. Crackle Nails is such a funny one. It's the next one on the list. Toms, I felt like it had a little bit more longevity than Crackle Nails. Crackle Nails feels like it was here and there for just a really hot second. I remember the advertising for this was everywhere. Like I saw so many advertisements for Crackle Nails. When I would go into my shoppers, there would be like end caps or just displays, mini display in the middle of an aisle, and there'd be like a cardboard sign and then a couple of nail polishes underneath it. I saw that everywhere, like at the grocery store, at an end cap for these freaking Crackle nail polishes. I think this is one where traditional advertising really sold us on this and sold us a lot of units, which is how a lot of makeup was advertised to us before social media and YouTube in specific. And I think what got a lot of us with this back in the day was the novelty of it, because we had yet to see anything like this. This was new and novel, and we thought, oh wow, cool, because there just isn't a lot of innovation that happens with nail polishes or in the nail space. And this one just kind of felt like, you know, something we haven't seen before. And so I think a lot of us got hooked on this, or at least wanted to try it because of the novelty. Did you like the Crackle Nails? I can, like, when I look back and I see the Toms, I'm like, I get it. I can get how this can be somebody's aesthetic. The Crackle Nails, I have a harder time with. All right, next up are Rainbow Loom bracelets. The Rainbow Loom had, I feel like, a chokehold on kids and tweens. I don't know if teens were really using this, but I know a ton of kids and teens or tweens who were super obsessed with Rainbow Loom. And this, I think, hit its height of popularity in 2014. It came out in 2011. And apparently this kind of rose to fame, according to a global toy expert, through the social network of the playground. And it spread out from there. So one blogger described the rise of the Rainbow Loom like this. I think it's very cool. So I'm going to read this to you in full. Though extraordinarily popular in its own right, Rainbow Loom was not the first rubber band toy to become a status symbol among children. The honor goes to silly bands. When I was talking about trends in a recent video, silly bands came up a lot. These are colorful shaped rubber bands covered the wrists and forearms of children in the 2000s. These toys retained their shape even after being stretched out and covered the arms of many elementary schoolers. A powerful asset, a significant number of silly bands could increase someone's popularity. Kids also use the bracelets as currency, trading different colors and shapes among themselves. It may seem like children had some unexplainable obsession with rubber bands, but in reality, this obsession was manufactured by the material culture of the US at the time. Kids are mirrors and reflect the behavior of those around them. Children in the 2000s saw the period's materialism and replicated it in their own way. Instead of Juicy Couture tracksuits and Tiffany & Co. bracelets, we had rubber bands that were relatively cheap and therefore accessible to a multitude of people. It is the ubiquity that I believe caused silly bands to skyrocket in sales and eventually led to the creation of the Rainbow Loom. I think that the author is right, given that silly bands happened not too long before Rainbow Loom came about. And so the kids like the silly bands. And then when Rainbow Loom, rose to prominence, kids already had this memory of this toy or this accessory that they had a previous experience with that they liked. And the Rainbow Loom kind of played off of that. Part of the appeal of the Rainbow Loom are all of the colors. It kind of became a bit like collecting, and there's so many flavors, so many colors that you could buy and add to your collection or make unique color combinations with. And this is such a smart play, adding in, like, when you have a product like this, adding in literally every color combination of the rainbow makes this appeal to a wider variety of people, but also increases purchases. Kids want to try out all the colors. Kids want to have their own flavor, their own unique combination, and it makes them more collectible in a way, and buying all of the things. This isn't unique behavior to children. I think this is a behavior that is replicated from adults. So this was a collect them all, have them all kind of mentality, or one that Rainbow Loom really fostered. You could buy so much in the pursuit of making bracelets. Kids do enjoy making things, but things that aren't too difficult to make, I think, do the best. So this was relatively affordable, and you would consume these products by making bracelets, so it encouraged continual purchasing, which is something that traditional toys don't have, where you just buy the one thing and then you're done. Friendship bracelets and, string and gimp bracelets are very popular among this demographic. I was a camp counselor for many years, and I used to make bracelets with my campers. We would have like friendship braiding sessions at the beach. There was always a group of kids who didn't like going in the water, so I would always be like, come hither, and we would make bracelets every day at the beach. Both string and gimp, those designs are relatively difficult to do, and also requires a lot of like dexterity in your fingers because the string is so small. Whereas I think Rainbow Loom made the process of making friendship bracelets much easier and faster, so you could produce more. One of the things that this particular entry makes me consider is when toys for children foster collecting or encourage materialism and collecting. This is a topic that I would ultimately like to explore more. Rainbow Loom isn't the first or last of this kind of product, and there are certainly crazes that have come before it that I think were equally, if not more popular, like the Beanie Baby or Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I owned a couple of Beanie Babies as a kid, and I think somebody bought me like a collector's book of Beanie Babies, and I would flick through there all the time. The Beanie Babies were really something that had a strong collecting background. Same thing with Yu-Gi-Oh! And it just feels icky to me to market products to children that also encourage collecting. Like, you're hooking young children onto collecting. I don't love that. So next on this list is just girly things. And this is one where if you were online in the mid to late 2000s, you've seen these. I saw these on Pinterest. I also saw these on We Heart This, but Just Girly Things was a Tumblr blog, and they were wildly popular. You'll know this when you see this. They had photos of girls doing stuff with text over top of like things that girls like to do, or at least that's the implication. These are so iconic. The messages or interests expressed on these images are things like moving to a big city, dancing with your best friend. And these were so general that they had really widespread appeal. In my opinion, this account really romanticized just like girlhood or teenhood, womanhood. It aestheticized life. And I think that is part of what drew people in. Although this content appealed to a lot of people, it was also widely criticized. It was made fun of in a way that people make fun of like the basic white girls in fall. Kind of like you're so basic. Like you have no imagination, and that like you're stupid and vapid if you like this kind of thing. I think there are valid criticisms of this kind of content because the images of the girls that are used are pretty typically white women, pretty typically very skinny and very like attractive looking people. I actually went on their account recently, and there's a ton of pride and queer content on there. Like instead of saying like moving to a big city, it'll be like celebrating pride in a big city, or like going on a date with your girlfriend, which I do love to see. Although the more modern images of this are less edited. The earlier ones from 2010s have that very edited Tumblr vibe to them. Like, this editing style. We all used to edit our photos like that. And so I do appreciate less editing, but a lot of the photos are still like a lot of really conventionally attractive women, and still a lot of white women and like skinny women on these photos. And so I think criticizing the types of people who are displayed in these is valid, but criticizing folks who like this kind of content for the messaging, I just don't love. And I think a lot of the people criticizing this kind of content were not like other girls. Just as the same reason why people who don't like pumpkin spice, fall, or Uggs criticize these things were because they weren't like other girls, and you're somehow stupid and shallow if you like the things that other girls like. Back in this day, I was absolutely one of those girls, and I was very much like, I'm not a sheep. I'm so cool, like quirky, like I'm not like other girls. I was one of those people, and I definitely had to do some unlearning and ingrained misogyny about treating other women like that. And if you like this, I totally understand why. And if I got out of my own head a bit, this is stuff that I totally would have loved. All right, next up is Pokemon Go, and this was in the mid 2010s. This came out in 2016. I actually thought it was later, but it was 2016. I think overall it's amassed, I was looking into some stats on this, it amassed like 1 billion users worldwide, like 240 million players in the US, which is like, what, like 2/3 of the American population, something like that. Maybe it's a little high. So many people played Pokemon Go. It was the most searched for game on Google in 2016, which I think is remarkable given that it came out in July, like more than halfway through the year. It was free, so it encouraged people to download and play. And I have absolutely nothing against Pokemon Go, or if you still play it, because it's free. I love a thing that's free. I think one of the reasons why this was so popular is because it really played on the nostalgia of people. A lot of folks played Pokemon when they were younger. They had the Pokemon cards, they watched Pokemon movies. Those people were very much adults in 2016. And so it hooked in a generation of kids, or a generation that, kids in the 90s that got reintroduced to Pokemon or reacquainted with Pokemon in a new way. People might not be interested in the playing cards anymore, but a video game that lets you, mobile game that lets you tap into that nostalgia and reacquaint yourself with the Pokemon of your youth is such a smart play, and what I think drew people in, and the free aspect of it also drew people in. According to one author, what made this so popular, or these games so special, is its ability to turn mundane activities like walking, exploring, and collecting into an exciting and interactive experience. There was a super low risk in trying this because it was free, and the augmented reality of this game really played into its popularity because it was one of the first AR games out there. And then you could, find Pokemon in your own neighborhood. Out of everything on this list, I think the community and social aspect of this game is the strongest. I think many of the examples on here hold a narrower audience, but this on the list I think has the widest audience. The freeness, as I've said like 4 times already, facilitated many people trying this thing, and I do think this became one of literally everybody's trying it. I'm hearing everybody playing Pokemon Go. It's a cultural phenomenon. I want to play too. I want to know what the hype is about. I want to have that experience. I think that really encouraged a lot of people to try it out. I was doing some research on it, and I was trying to figure out what encouraged people to download it to begin with. Like, where did it start? How did it get its rise? And although I did mention the augmented reality and also the turning mundane activities into something more exciting, you have to have already heard about it to play it, to get these benefits from it. So how did people hear about it? How did that first spur of people, how did they get into it? And I don't really have a clear answer to this. It's just more assumptions, like nostalgia, something appearing on the App Store, then social media, word of mouth. I don't fully know. The last thing on this list are hair feathers. And this is another one that I think was in the early parts of 2010s. And I remember seeing this everywhere. You could get these done at salons. I remember seeing booths at the mall, also at like the CNE or Wonderland, which are like, Wonderland is like just an amusement park in Toronto. These were like little things that you could also get in clip-ins. I really think that one of the reasons why these became popular is because of the novelty. They are a revival of a 1970s trend, but when you think about hair, there isn't like a lot of new stuff that happens in hair and hair accessories. Kind of just re-updating or recycling of trends. There have been different types of headbands that have been popular, but there hasn't been anything in a while that I would call innovative or something I haven't seen before, or different kinds of scrunchies or hair elastics or pins. It's all kind of similar. Stuff might be more appealing than others for whatever reason, but I think the hair feather was just something that was so unique that many of us haven't seen before. There hasn't really been much else like it, and the 70s are not in my lifetime. So I think people who didn't get to experience the 70s, who never got this in the 70s, are really experiencing or did experience novelty when this became popular. One of the things that this trend highlights is how hair can be an accessory. And it's a little bit interesting to think about because we're more used to hair accessories like headbands and scrunchies and clips, but this was a time or a moment where a part of our bodies themselves became an accessory. And I don't think we're used to thinking about our physical bodies in that way, even if we adorn ourselves with trends or accessories. And this really gets me thinking about how parts of our bodies can be trendy or accessorized, right? Like there are hair trends that exist, or hair colors where ways that highlights or color is displayed or dispersed. Who remembers the two-toned hair, like light on the bottom, dark underneath, or light underneath, dark on top? I remember that very much in the 2010s. Very popular when I was in high school. But also even things like tattoo styles that are very permanent still are part of trend cycles. Our hair being trendy or participating in trends is very interesting. I don't have all my thoughts on this together. I've been thinking about making a video on this because there have definitely been hair trends of the past 20 years. Like the side shave was really popular for many years. Fashion colors like pink, purple, and blue, but also gray hair had its moment, and purple hair as well. Different highlighting techniques like frosted tips and the chunky highlights have all had their moment. And there is more to say about when we consumerize ourselves, when we turn our hair into trends or representative of consumer products, or we found ways, I guess, to commodify and consumerize our physical bodies, which again, I don't have all my thoughts on, but it's just very interesting conceptually. Those are 8 things that have been trends in the 2010s and kind of some of my thoughts on them. I would love to hear if you participated in any of these, if you bought any of this stuff or tried it. Also, what are some other things from the 2010s that you might think of? I did leave out fidget spinners and some other kind of more like fashion trends, like a particular color or cut of jean, because I think when we think about, or my mindset for these trends were like very specific examples, like the UGG boot or the Fat Farm shoes, opposed to like a general trend like the skinny jean. Anyways, I'd love to hear from you and hear your takes on the 2010s trends. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you again around here soon. Bye.